So, quick question. Who's having the perfect moment right now? Perfect moment. Now, how many of you have had the perfect morning? How many of you had the perfect week? Everything went perfect this week. Month? Year? Life? Yeah. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Because life happens. Life happens. So, as spiritual truth seekers, we're taught about the perfect life and who we are perfectly, and we kind of touched on that in meditation. But then life happens, and things don't quite go the way you want them to, and it's not so easy to remain a perfect spiritual person when the less than perfect happens in our lives, and we forget who we really are. So this was a lesson that I had to relearn last month. My husband and I spent 2 months in Cuenca, Ecuador. We went down there to get out of the heat, the Florida heat. So we were in this city in Ecuador at about 8,000 feet up in the mountains, and much more temperate climate. Thought it would be perfect. And we were in downtown, didn't need a car, so we walked everywhere, and we would get up every morning, and we would go on these wonderful walks along the river in the city. There's actually 4 little rivers, mountain streams, that come through the city. That's why it's there. And we would get up and walk a couple miles downstream or upstream and then come back. The problem was, for me, I grew up north in Ohio and moved to Florida because I don't like cold weather. I moved here for the warm weather. And we went to get out of the heat. But we got up in the mornings, some mornings, and it was in the 40s. And sometimes, if the sun didn't shine all day, it never got up past the 60s. And on one of those mornings, I realized we had traveled further away from the heat than I wanted to be. So we're walking down this mountain stream through this beautiful, beautiful park. And it had been cloudy the night before, and it was cloudy that morning. So it was in the 40s, and I was bundled up. And the sun never came out, and the clouds were getting thicker, and the wind started blowing across the mountains. And then it started that really annoying mist that hits you in the face, and it just sticks on your glasses, and you can't see. And the longer I walked, the quieter I got. And I felt my fingers going numb, and the wet kind of seeping through my clothes. And my husband, Craig, finally said, "Well, you're awful quiet." And I took a breath and I said, "I am miserable." Because that's exactly how I felt in that moment. And truth be told, between I am and miserable, there were some other adjectives. There were some adjectives. I grew up around a lot of brothers in an all-boys Catholic high school, so my vocabulary to fill in that blank is extensive. And I did. And I realized that what I had done was I had chose to move outside of myself, and I had chose to be a victim. That I had chose to be defined by what I was experiencing. And I had to make a decision with what I was going to do with that. And I realized that I had a lesson for me in that miserable moment. That I am walking down this beautiful path along this beautiful stream in this great old city, saying that I am miserable. And I had to stop myself and go back to, "You're a minister, you can't say things like that. What can you do?" And I had to realize, no, I am not miserable. I am fine. I am a perfect, loved creation of a divine being put here on this planet for a specific person. However, the weather, it was miserable. It was miserable. And I had to be able to draw that line between who I am and what I was experiencing so that I could stay true to myself and in my divine nature. That was the choice that I had to make. My lesson in that miserable experience was that I had to remember who I was. It's easy to think everything's wonderful when things are wonderful, but not to be and claim what you're experiencing around you. And it's a lesson not just for miserable weather. It's a lesson for me when I'm unwell, when I have a health challenge, if I'm financially not solvent. Instead of saying, I am sick, I am poor, I am miserable, I am all of these negative things, I need to remember, no, that's not who I am. That's who I am not. What I am is whole and complete and spiritual and divine at my core. The experience may not be quite so perfect. That was my lesson. And what I learned also was that with this experience of something less than perfect, there's a choice that you can do with this negativity that you experience in your life. You have a choice. You can either transmit it or you can transmute it. You can transform it or transmit it. And for that first mile, when that rain started hitting me in the face, I did a lot of transmitting. I did a whole lot of transmitting, mostly at my husband. But I transmitted it to anybody who walked past me on that path too, because they knew by the look on my face I was not a happy person. They could tell by how I had my shoulders up and I was swinging my arms. I was transmitting all over the place. But I could transform it into a reminder of the truth of who and what I am. That I could walk away from it and experience life in a completely different way. And one of the reasons you want to do this is because it makes a complete 180 turnabout in your experience of life. And your life can take a completely drastically different trajectory based on that. I went back and looked at an extreme example of what happens when you're in severe circumstances or situations. Mine was unpleasant weather. What if you're in a Nazi concentration camp? What do you do with that? So there's a very famous physician, Dr. Let me get his name right, Viktor Frankl, and he survived a number of concentration camps. And he noticed that some of the people around him were dying a lot faster than others. Before they ever got to the gas chambers, they were dying. And other people, through the most severe of circumstances, were surviving. And he survived. And what he realized was a couple things, and he ended up writing a book called Man's Search for Meaning. But he realized that those who survived were able to connect with a purpose in their life and then feel positive about it. That they realized that the circumstances they were in were not the only thing that dictated how they were going to live, that they had a choice. And they had a choice to remember who and what they were, and that there was the opportunity for that divine, they wouldn't have called it divine, but I'll call it what we call our divine. When they realized that divine nature within themselves had the opportunity to outlive the circumstances that they were currently in. And because they had that awareness, they survived when others didn't. They made that choice. They could see something beyond the physical. And instead of living as the victim of their circumstances, they were the generator of their circumstances. They were living from within out and not from out in. That's how you get the most out of being miserable, as remembering it's out there. It's not in here. That's not who and what you are. Who and what you are is a divine being created by a loving God. and the power and the freedom that comes with that. The peace that you can find that comes with that. In John 14:27, Jesus says this, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid." It's a real famous one of his quotes. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives." Because the world gives from the external in. The world gives peace as a lack of conflict, a lack of war, a lack of problems, a lack of troubles. Jesus says, that's not the peace that you want to live from. I'm not giving you that peace. I'm giving you the peace from within, the peace that I have, the peace of knowing who and what you are as a divine being. That's the peace that you need to live from. That's what I want to give you. That's what you need to remember. Not the world's peace, divine peace, inner peace. That's what gets you through those miserable experiences. Remembering who and what you are. So what do we do? How do we get through when those miserable things hit us, when that cold rain hits us in the face? Take a breath. Become aware. Because it's going to happen. And it's going to bring up things within us. Sad emotions. Death of a loved one will give you grief and sadness. And it doesn't do any good to say, oh, no, I am whole and healthy and perfect and a divine being. That's what we call metaphysical malpractice. You can't deny what's going on. And it's okay, because things less than perfect are going to happen in our lives. And when we have something that makes us sad, it's okay to be sad. And be sad and know how and why you're sad. You're not broken. You're just sad. You may realize that you're out of cash. Your accounts are empty. You don't have enough to pay your bills. But you are not poor. There may be worry, there may be frustration, but you are not poor. It's those power of I am statements that we want to make sure that we always fall back on, are always saying wonderful things about ourselves, because the most powerful thing you can ever say in your life is the word that follows I am. Because remember, our thoughts, words, and actions create the world we live in. And if we tell the world, I am sick, I am poor, I am sad, I am whatever, that's what you create in your world. That's what you draw to you. So we change it to, I am experiencing grief. I am experiencing maybe poverty. I am experiencing ill health. I am experiencing a health challenge. I am experiencing miserable weather. But I am not those things. I am love. I am peace. I am power. I am perfect. I am prosperity. I am divine. I am whole, well. It's those words we want to put into the universe. It's those energies we want to attract to ourselves. It's those things we want to recreate in all that we say and do. We want to transform what's happening to us into a reminder of who and what we are. And sometimes that takes compassion for ourselves, compassion for others who may be going through similar things, compassion for events and circumstances. Because a lot of times I have to have compassion for myself when I don't get it right. When I fall into I am awful. I mean, how many times, I can't say how many times do you, but I'm saying how many times will I do something and I'll be like, I am so stupid, I can't believe I did that. And then have a little bit of compassion and go, no, you got it wrong again. That's all right. Learn from this experience. I made a mistake. I'm fine. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I can figure this out. I'm all good. I made a mistake. So sometimes we fall into those I am negative statements because we're replaying something in our heads that we were taught or given in our past. How many times have perhaps you've done something and the old record in your head starts playing from a parent or a teacher or an old authority figure that said, no, not you. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. You're not this. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough. Those are those things. Remember when you've been in a service, and you'll hear this a lot in Unity, where we want to release what no longer serves us? And a lot of times for years, I'm like, I'm not really sure what that means. What do you mean, what no longer? I don't know what no longer serves me. That's it right there. Those old thoughts and beliefs that were given to you that are in your subconscious or even in your conscious mind that keep coming up and making you think that you are less than what you really are. Those old thoughts and belief systems that no longer serve you because they sabotage your awareness of the present moment of your perfect and divine nature. So those are those things we want to let go of that no longer serve us. Those are the things that need to go from our consciousness and from our thinking so that we can stay present in those moments and remember the truth of who and what we are. So the truth of who and what I was while I finished my walk that last mile in Ecuador, when I walked for a good 1.5 miles, like this, was to remember that their miserable conditions were completely outside of me. Completely outside of me. And I couldn't, at that moment, do anything about them. I couldn't stop the rain. I couldn't stop the wind. I couldn't make the sun come out and warm me up. I could decide to remember that I was fine in that moment, that I was safe, that I was whole, that I was healthy, that I was clothed appropriately to get back home. And then what I could do is start looking at the mountain stream that was going past me again. And I could start appreciating this beautifully manicured park that we were walking through. And what I could do is notice all the architecture of this old city on this mountain in Ecuador. And then what I could do is appreciate that I was walking through a culture and a town and an experience that I was very likely never going to have again in my life after I left at the end of the month. And that's what I invite you to do when the miserable happens in your lives, is to remember the miserable is outside of you. And if you can remember you're experiencing something, that you are not something, that you can broaden your realm of experience, that you can look beyond the immediate negative things that are happening in your life. And from that centeredness of remembering who and what you are as a divine being, with all of those powers given to us and gifts because we're divine in nature, that when the imperfect happens, you can look past it from your place of perfection and see the good that's around you and change and transform your experience. Amen? Amen.